Hi, I'm Shane Monahan. I am a former professional rugby player from Ireland and I played in the UK also. I am the founder and CEO of Limor, the social audio platform, and this is the game plan.
Shane Monahan, welcome to the game plan. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, well, Shane, for those of our guests and listeners that don't know the experiences of playing at the professional level in the UK and Ireland, give us a little bit of your background and how you found your way into the sport of, rugby.
Yeah, so slightly different, I think, to your normal guests, where NFL, NBA, rugby, not quite at the heights of those sports in the States, but it is growing in America. I've got a few friends who've actually moved over there now and playing professionally in the States, which I'm quite jealous of. But my background, originally, before I got into the entrepreneurial space with Limor, I was a professional rugby player. I made the decision when I was 12 that, right, I want to play professional rugby when I grow up. And that was my focus. And it's great in my secondary school, or high school as you guys would call it. They did a brilliant thing in first year when you go in and they actually record you and they say, right, Shane, what do you want to do when you grow up? So I have video proof that that's a fact. That's exactly what I said. I said, it was one or two things. I want to join the army or I want to be a professional rugby player. And if the rugby didn't work out, I would have went down the military route. But thankfully, it did. And I worked my way up the ranks in Ireland. Ireland's a kind of there was originally kind of a two-tier system. You have the schools, which is kind of the majority, 95% of players who went professional would have gone through the school system, and then you had the youth system. I went to a community college, and not private school, so I kind of broke in through the back door. That's changed a lot now with the evolution of rugby in Ireland. But I worked my way up the ranks in Leinster. Would have been my team. It's the province, the area where I come from. Leinster rugby now are seen as is probably the best team in the world. So it was they weren't when I was in the academy. It was before they exploded, and they were kind of whipping boys. We have forwards and backs in rugby, and they had some of the best backs in the world, but the forwards got a beating nearly every week. But now they're the complete article. And I was there. I was in the Leinster Academy during that evolution, which was incredible, very historic in Irish rugby and Leinster as a club. And the big chain, like most things, is a personality comes in. And we had a hell of a personality. A fella called Michael Cheika was a very gruff, aggressive Australian, and he changed the culture. And I think it was it his second year maybe. They won the European Cup, which was the biggest cup you could possibly win, or could still win. So I was there during the whole process, which was very interesting. Unfortunately for me at the time, he wasn't there to blood new players. He was there to make them win with the players he had. So that was a hell of an experience. I played international underage as well, right the way up to under 20s, and our under 20s team won the Six Nations Grand Slam, which had never been done for our age group. And a lot of that team went on to be internationals in British and Irish Lions, and some of the greatest players in Irish history, really, which was a pretty cool thing to be involved in that squad. Then, like most careers, I won't get into it too much, ups and downs. Didn't work out in Leinster. Ended up going over to Connacht for a year. Didn't work out there either. And got on the boat and went over to UK to essentially restart my career all over again in the championship. And within 2 seasons, I was on reserve for the international team, and Irish teams in Ireland wanted me back again. So it shows I'm sure you've heard that a lot, the fickleness of sport. You're hot, you're not, you're hot again. And loved it over in the UK. Rotherham, the first team I played for there for a season, and championship got recruited by and signed by Gloucester. As you can see the jersey on the wall there. And spent 2 wonderful years there playing at the highest level. I achieved the goal, my dream. And that wasn't until really I was 23, going on 24 when I signed with them. So from 12, it wasn't until 24. Even though I was in the system for a long time, it wasn't until then that I actually reached where I wanted to reach. And then, unfortunately, coaches changed in my last season. And ultimately, that led to me retiring from rugby.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story. You know, it's not too dissimilar, by the way, from a lot of our guests in the NFL ranks that come in. I think people don't, maybe listeners of our show know this, but regular maybe listeners don't. 60% of guys on the NFL roster are on a minimum contract. And for them, you know, the lifespan is about 2 to 3 years. You know, they'll play with another team. Maybe they'll go play in Canada. And that's actually the more common experience. Although we all think about the superstars, most of the guys that are playing are at that level. And I appreciate you sharing that idea of like, yeah, sometimes it's about the fit, right? You may be a great player at that moment, but if you're with the wrong team, or if you're not getting the support that you need to sort of achieve at the position you're in, it's really tough. I guess for you, you know, in those sort of up and down years, was there a moment where you started thinking about, okay, this is sort of my last year, or I got to start thinking about what comes next? Or what was that process of thinking about the next act for you?
I never had that up until ultimately the last year when I did retire. It was iron focus. I knew my ability. I knew I was good enough. And every player I had played with was at like world-class players, as I said. They're at there. I was able to swim with the sharks, as it were. When it came to that, I knew my unique selling point as a player. There were very few players who did what I did. Okay, I had weaknesses to my game, but I had strengths that were better than other people in my position. You know, so being able to play to my strengths and my unique selling point was a big thing. And you had a lot of in Ireland as well. It was kind of because we're a small enough nation, and you're in because you're in the bubble of Leinster. Okay. Leinster, the best team in Europe, you know, and you were kind of, if you didn't get your contract in Leinster, a lot of guys who were there like, oh no, I didn't make it in Leinster, I won't make it anywhere else.
Yeah.
Even though it's the best team in the world. And if they were in any other club, they probably would have got their contract. So there was that side of it as well. You didn't really, looking back now, you realize a lot more. But me was kind of like, right, if I don't make it in Leinster, I'm going to make it somewhere. I don't care. I'm not giving up. I know I have the ability. And that's why I went to Connacht, same thing. It wasn't my rugby ability that stopped me from getting a contract. It was the opportunity to show what I could do. Like if you get the opportunity and you keep messing up, or you're not able to play at that level, then it becomes quite apparent you're not good enough. That never happened for me. So that's thankfully what happened. When I went to the UK, I got the opportunity. And in my first season in the UK, in the championship, I played more rugby in one season than I did in 4 years in Ireland. So that's where you get to prove yourself. Consistency, staying injury free, which is another huge thing.
Yeah.
Ironically, for me, the less I played, the more I would get injured, because it's like ring rust, as they say in WWE.
Yeah.
The less you play, the more chance your body's not used to it and more likely to get injured. So I got blooded in the UK. Championship is the second tier. It's a very, very hard league, very difficult league. If you can get through that league injury-free and performing well, the Premiership go, right, we can guarantee as them, even as a player, to fill in as a second choice or third choice. And that's what happened in Gloucester. I got signed, draft pick, probably draft 7,000th pick, at the end of the season. I didn't care. I said, right, I'm in. If I get the opportunity, I'll prove myself. And ultimately, that's what happened. I got the opportunity, best season I ever had in my career. And like you're saying, I was only ever on 1 year contracts.
Yeah.
So come Christmas, you're like, oh shit, am I going to get a contract? And that takes away from concentrating on what you want to do, is playing, the extra stress and all that. So I got my first ever 2-year extension when I was in Gloucester, which was an amazing thing, a huge thing for me at the time. And I never listened to the naysayers. I had that in Ireland when I went from Leinster, who at the time best in the world, to Connacht, who at the time were at the bottom of the league.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a contract with them. I was like, right, you didn't get a contract with Connacht. Maybe it's time to think about doing something else. And I was only 21 at the time, 22. And I was like, what are you talking about? No, thanks. And that's what kind of led me to the UK. And I backed myself, and thankfully I did well in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, two interesting points that you made there. One is how hard it is to plan for things when you're only looking 1 year ahead, right? hard to put down roots, hard to know, am I going to be here? Should I start to make friends? Should I, find sort of my favorite spots here? Or am I going to be moving on to do something else? It's frightfully common how often we hear that. I guess the second piece of it is, again, a lot of what we do on this show is we sort of find the bridge between sports and entrepreneurship. And the point that you were saying to me about just staying alive to show what you can do, right? One more year, stay alive to show what you can do. So much of it sounds like the entrepreneurial experience, right? Hey, I just need to get to this point. I need to stay alive because, we may be ahead of the market and the market can catch up to us. And it's interesting. No one's ever actually on this show, 68, 69 episodes. No one's ever sort of said it in that way. But it's like, yeah, I need to back myself and stay alive as just to be able to show that we're able to actually achieve it. So I appreciate you sharing that piece.
And there's another one as well, a perfect example of that, not being able to put down roots and the worry. So the season I was in Rotherham, right, I moved into a house, and a lot of the times when you rent a property, there's no furniture, there's no beds, so you have to buy it yourself. And the other thing is, there's not big money in rugby at all. And even at the top level, okay, at your very top you can do well, but at the level in the championship, below minimum wage, okay? And so obviously sleep is very important as an athlete. I said, I'm not going to sleep on the floor, I'm going to buy a bed. So I forked out I think it was about £400, which was like a month's salary. It was crazy, or not far off, to get this bed in the house in Rotherham. And it was on 1 year, and thankfully I got the contract from Gloucester, but Rotherham's in the north of England and Gloucester's in south west. And when I was leaving, I was like, how the hell am I going to get this bloody bed down to Gloucester? I didn't have an apartment to move into straight away. And what am I going to do? And my friend who was living there at the time, I said, can I store it in your garage until I get sorted out? And anyway, the bed and the mattress stayed, and it's probably still over there, and there's probably gerbils or something living in it. But because of that, when I was in Gloucester, I was worried to say, oh shit, if I spend another 400 quid on another bed, because I don't know whether I'm going to be here. So for most of the first season, which is mad about it, I was on a blow-up mattress because I was afraid to buy a bed in case you didn't get a contract. This is the mentality you're in, unfortunately.
Uncertain. It's hard to manage anything in life with that much uncertainty, right? And so even just something as simple as like, what am I going to sleep on tonight? I can't imagine, right? Then having to say, okay, well, now I've got to go and perform at my best. And, maybe this is a trial for me. I really have to show my best, but I don't even know what bed I'm going to have when I get home. So I appreciate that side of it. Talking one last piece about making that transition over before we talk about Limor, which is what I really want to get into. We all have benchmarks that we look at in our career, people that are maybe a couple years ahead of us that are achieving what it is that we're looking for. Who are some of the, mentors or guides that you looked at as the gold standard for post-career, athletic career achievement that you said, okay, that's my North Star. That's the guy that I want to follow?
That's an interesting question. I had that in sport. Obviously, where I came from, I had a guy called Shane Horgan who was very similar type player to me from my hometown. 2 years older than me, and eventually he was in Leinster as well. He was my hero growing up, and I got to play one game with Shane when we were Leinster pre-season to that stage. So that was kind of like my shining light, and I was pipped to be kind of like the same name as him, same area, same position, same type of player. The next Shane Horgan per se didn't work out like that. Unfortunately, he had an amazing career in terms of international level as well. Business wise, I didn't really have that in business. I met a lot of people along the way who inspired me to do things. I suppose I was inspired in a way, and I didn't realize it, by my own family background. In that I come from a family of entrepreneurs, in that my dad was an entrepreneur, and my grandfather was an entrepreneur in the 50s, and he opened the first dry cleaners in our town. Do you get me? This kind of stuff. He opened he had a textile factory. He did extremely well, and then the family business was a sports store. It shrank, as he got older, and then my dad took over, and it was known as Monahan's sports shop in Drogheda. And I was on the floor in there as a 6-7-year-old selling clothes to people. So learning the trade without even realize that I was learning about being in sales and retail and all that from my dad. And my dad has an amazing story as well in terms of entrepreneurial journey during the late 80s, early 90s. Started a clothing brand and initially just went to Malaysia and started a sports brand, and it exploded in early 90s. And then he got hit by the crash, the Black Monday, and success, failure. So there was that side of it. And my parents, I think I wouldn't be where I am without them. Outside of that, the rugby environment, it's full of leaders. It's full of people who inspire you. Again, you don't realize it. The education you're getting when you're around those people, hard work, never give up attitude, trust, teamwork, all this side of stuff, inspirational type people who are the 1% of the population. And this is normal. That becomes normal for you. And there's that. And then through Gloucester in particular, I had an opportunity to sign to come back and play for Munster, which are at the time would have been the number 2 team in Europe. They've won the European Championship loads as well. Very good deal, great opportunity. And as I said, on the reserve for getting my international cap if I had moved home. And I didn't do it because the opportunity outside of rugby in Gloucester was so much bigger. Like you've got the UK, a population of 80 million people. You've got Ireland, 4.5 million people. It's one city. And you don't get exposed to the same level. So again, it's that balancing act between my finite sports career and what I want to do and my absolute passion to, I could go out and break my leg tomorrow and it's all over, and finding that balance. And in Gloucester in particular, it's very close to Cheltenham. It's a very wealthy area. It's probably outside of London. It's one of the most wealthy parts of the country. All the royal family live around that area. So I was exposed to a lot of very successful business people and talking to them and learning about their businesses, and you're right in the hub. It's a really exciting area. And one guy always sticks with me. In the last season, big shout out to Josh Frape and the RPA, which who look after the Rugby Players Association, look after the players and all that. Brought us to a kind of a mentor evening, an introduction meeting in Cheltenham with about 5 or 6 of the players. And it was with a guy called Julian Dunkerton. And he is the man, I don't know if you've ever heard of the clothing brand Superdry.
Yeah.
So he's the man behind Superdry, essentially. So started from the back of a van and built it into hundreds of millions of dollars company, one of the biggest clothing brands in the world. And we got to sit around with him. This guy, he uses a Nokia phone. He doesn't even use a smartphone. All right, real down to that kind of bloke, terrible English accent there. But I got to have a chat, like when we did the chat and all that, and certain things he was saying about business. If you're going into business, if you're being an entrepreneur, little tips. One that stuck with me as well was, he said, listen, guys, if you're planning on starting a business, he said, do not do it on your own. Get a partner. It's essential, because if things go bad, you have someone who is in the trenches with you, who understands exactly what you're going through. They are as invested in it as you are, and you support one another to succeed or fix the problems. And when you do succeed, you have someone you can enjoy it with. So the same in a team sport. When you win, everyone understands it. It's a brotherhood. It's, that emotional feeling that all that work has been done. And that's something that stuck with me massively for when I went into Limor, and took that to do essentially the role of a selector and coach in what I learned from them, to recruit my team of people who have skills that I didn't have to help us win, essentially, the different positions in the team.
Yeah. I first of all love that piece of advice, and I love that story, because I got very, very similar advice when I was leaving my last job to start my own fund. And as I was sitting down with my mentor, and I was like, yeah, I think I have this idea and I want to go invest in these kind of companies. And he was like, don't do it alone. It's a very lonely job. Look, investing in startups, venture capital, especially at the stage that I invest in, is in and of itself a lonely job. I can do it all from a laptop. I don't have to be anywhere, especially in these COVID days, right? You get to just talk to founders over Zoom. But there is so much of this which is about decision-making, about imperfect information, imperfect data, not having somebody that you can just bounce ideas back and forth on, not having somebody who is checking your biases or checking your impulses, it just makes it harder to know whether you're going down the right path. And the worst thing is you start with a lot of conviction and you go down a path and there was nobody to check you. And now suddenly you've spent a year spinning your wheels down the wrong path. And so I got very, very similar advice, and I'm really glad that you shared that as well. So let's dive into Limor. I feel like we've been beating around the bush a little bit. Tell us about Limor. What is the product, and how did the idea really come about? How did you start with Limor?
Okay, so Limor is a new social audio platform that makes the process of podcast production, distribution, and interaction easy, instant, and interactive.
Okay.
So I got the idea when I was still playing rugby, my last season in Gloucester. So December 2014, so quite a while ago now, having a conversation with my dad. He was in a voluntary group here in Drogheda, wanted to spread the good word about what they were doing, and was finding it very difficult because he wasn't tech savvy, didn't have social media. But they're great. They had fantastic conversations. He's a great speaker, very passionate about what he does. So I said, Dad, you need to start a podcast. And his answer was, what's a podcast? So like 9 out of 10 people in 2014 didn't have a clue what podcasts were, which shows the scale of growth of the industry. So I explained to him what they were. I showed him some examples, and he said, Shane, that is amazing. How do I do it? So I said, well, Dad, to do it right, you're going to need headphones, a microphone, recording device, a laptop, a desktop, editing software, learn about RSS feeds, learn how to produce, set up your social media accounts, have your website. He's like, whoa. Too much information. I'm not interested. So we went from amazing idea to not interested in seconds. And that's when the term less is more came to mind, which is the name Limor, Limor, less is more. Which is a great design phrase, which I don't know if I mentioned, I have a degree in product design as well, which I got when I was in Leinster in Dublin in DIT. So I had this initial seed of an idea. I said, wow, imagine there was an app for someone like my dad or anyone who wanted to instantly record their voice, record a podcast, and instantly share it. And that evolved. And like I originally got into podcasts around 2012 when I just started in Gloucester. When I didn't play rugby, I would spend my time painting. So I would paint portraits of my fellow players who would then sign them, and I would sell them because it became sports memorabilia then. So I did very well in that. And this is actually, when I say that's actually a painting of the jersey, which is signed by the guys.
Yeah.
So essentially, as a consumer of a podcast, I said, one, I love podcasts for the fact that you can multitask. I could paint and listen to a podcast, so that's an advantage straight away. But there was a lot of issues as well. One, as we mentioned, creating the content, very difficult to get started. And then as a consumer as well, there's a lot of issues around search and accessibility and all that side of it, which are still big problems now in 2022. So I said, we have all these problems. How can I fix them? So that's exactly what we've done with Limor. Limor is a new social audio platform that takes all the best aspects of existing social media platforms that people are used to and applying it to voice, not just podcasting, but all forms of voice. So essentially what Instagram did for images and TikTok did for video, we do for voice and podcasting. So you can set up a profile, people can follow you, you can follow them back, you can instantly record a 30-second recording or an hour-long traditional podcast, as I call it, like we're doing right now, instantly edit it, but very simple production, like text message, you have copy, paste, delete on your text, you've copy, paste, delete for audio.
Yeah.
So it's a have it and not need it. The Joe Rogan philosophy, don't edit, record, talk, share. And that's what I love about podcasts as well. I don't look at podcasts as interviews. I look at them as conversations, and you don't edit conversation. So it's there, okay, if someone curses too much or if there's a dog barking, you have the ability to edit it out. But essentially, to have it and not need it, and then publish. You can add an image, title, description, hashtags, category, which we've introduced, so business or sport or whatever, language. So it could be in English or it could be in Jamaican, or Jamaica's not language, but Indian or whatever. I know there's about, wrong country, there's about like 100 different languages in India.
Yeah.
Spanish, there you go, Spanish. And then you can instantly publish to your profile. And if you have 100,000 followers, they can instantly listen. They can instantly engage with likes, recasts, which is the equivalent of a retweet for people who use Twitter, and comment. But the commenting, you have basic characters for text, but you have voice comments. So this is the social aspect of it. So people, I'm sure now, are very aware of WhatsApp voice messages and the voice groups. So think of that, but with the world. So you could share our conversation here, and just plugging out a name that most people know, The Rock. I always use him. He could come in and leave a voice comment on your cast and go, "Jays, that was a great conversation. Have you tried my tequila?" Because he's always plugging his tequila. I haven't tasted it yet. Rocky, if you're listening, send us some free samples to Ireland.
Yes.
But and then you can reply, I can reply, other people listening can reply, and it makes it social. And that's the first level tier of Limor, which is asynchronous, and it's evolving also. Private messaging, we'll have live. And very importantly, we have the data analytics. Because it's a centralized platform, the level of social audio information we'll be able to provide content creators is huge. And one aspect that's extremely difficult is monetization. We're going to have Limor Patron, which is essentially gives you the ability to instantly sell your content as well, if you wish. And again, as I said, it's a voice platform. I'm not building it for today. I'm building it for 2, 3, 4 years from now, because that's where all technology is going. It's going voice, AI, machine learning, voice to text, text to speech, smart speakers. In time, Limor, it'll be the same user experience for us as it will be for someone who's visually impaired or blind, because it'll all be voice activated. It'll be a seamless transition from screen to audio. So I'll be scrolling through my phone, using Limor. Then I get into my car, I'm using Limor in my car. Go into the kitchen, I'm using Limor in my smart speaker. And then you apply that to the Patron, which is voice commerce, which is buying and selling via voice. So it's a complete package. Foundation of it is completely in voice.
Yeah. So no, it's a great. Let's touch on a couple things there, because we went through a lot of stuff. The one thing that I really like about this, one, obviously, I'm a fan of podcasting. We've been doing this show for a couple of years now. There's a level of closeness and intimacy that you have with the audience with voice. Then I honestly think even more so than video sometimes, right? Because I think there's something about having a friend in your ear. It sounds like you're having a conversation with somebody, and it's the closeness of being able to listen in. And I have felt myself sometimes listening to these shows where I go, wait, hold on, I have a thought. I actually know about this thing. And you get two guys that are like, yeah, I wonder if anybody knows about that. I'm like, oh my God, I actually do know the answer to this thing. And the inability to actually chime in or, wait until you're able to interact with them definitely makes the podcast experience feel a little bit more one-directional. I guess on the flip side of it, what I would like to say is, what kind of shows does this really work for? Because I think podcasting is pretty broad in itself, right? We have the scripted kind of shows, the shows that are more evergreen, people go back and listen to 6-7 years from now. And then there is the of the moment, the reacting to the news of the day. On that spectrum of sort of evergreen to ephemeral, where do you feel like Limor content lives?
Ultimately, you see, the beauty of Limor is you can still upload pre-recorded content to your profile. So you can, and we've playlists. So on your profile. So you can do whatever type of content you want, depending on your niche or your audience. I'm not building or providing Limor to compete or replace traditional podcasts. It's there to complement them.
Okay.
So you can share your show, the game plan, on your traditional platforms. You can share it in Limor as well, but you can complement it with extra content that you can't do. And your show that you share on Spotify or wherever, you can then make it interactive on Limor. So the people on Limor can talk and do that engagement piece. And you're 100% correct. Like, the statistics back up the intimacy of voice and podcast content. And that's why everyone is, all marketers, we need to get in to podcast, because the level of trust that you can build with your audience is unmatched. Because of the nature of audio and how it works in the brain, and that translates then into marketing. And podcast listeners outspend their peers by as much as 179%, which is insane.
Yeah.
Like video Average video when you're scrolling, its average attention span is about 8 to 10 seconds, where a podcast average attention span is 30 to 34 minutes. Yeah. So try and build a relationship with someone in 10 seconds versus 30 minutes. Sell your brand, your business, your passion. There's no comparison. And how people consume it, it's the multitasking as well. As you said, you can cook your scrambled eggs in the morning and consume the game plan, you know? But now with Limor, you can cook your eggs and record content at the same time or interact at the same time. So it's just, as I said, it's giving the tools, the extra tools to the traditional podcasters. Like we have people, you said the evergreen, you have people who come on and do 20-minute, 30-minute shows, or you have people who go on and do a 2-3 minute movie review or book review or horse tips. 3 horse tips in 3 minutes, or stock updates, cryptocurrency updates, and they get the interaction piece, or people just spark a conversation, say, listen, I watched the Book of Boba Fett, wasn't too sure it was a great series. What do you think? One of the best examples we had of that was a guy who's into comic books. He said, I love comic books. I love superheroes. If I had a superpower, it would be the ability to create fire. What would your superpower be? And I'm like, holy shit, that's a great question. I'd have super strength. And you had loads of people going, I wish I was invisible. I wish I could fly. It's on the user. We're giving you the tools. It's up for them to decide, you know?
Yeah, I do. I think it's actually one of my favorite social media platforms is Reddit. And I love the interactivity because, yep, there are serious questions that get asked. But then, you know, there are also lots of fun threads where people are making jokes with each other and you're riffing off of what the last guy said and the last guy said after that. And there's just something so uniquely organic because when you realize like it's 145 countries or however many countries that Reddit is in, I'm making jokes with people on the other side of the world that, you know, maybe English for them is a second language or something, but we're all laughing about the same thing. There is something really beautiful about that shared experience that is a lot harder to do with traditional platforms, right? Even with TikTok, I think TikTok probably to its best degree has allowed people to start with a shared item and then do derivatives off of that, do riffs off of that. And that riffing is, I think, a very natural human thing. Building, you know, the end of your answer becomes the beginning of my answer, and we just keep building off of each other. That's a very beautiful human thing that really hasn't existed up until I'd say the last couple of years.
Yeah, most definitely. And even now, like I get excited if I leave a comment and someone replies with a voice comment on Limor. And it's, as you said, it brings humanity back to social media, something that's been lost, you know, the keyboard warrior thing, or, you know, people don't see the person behind the words or the image. And very quickly, you can build a connection with someone. Like there's people I've never met. I've never even seen their face. But I said, I could meet them for a pint and we'd have fun. Yeah. You know, we connect. We can talk about movies or we can talk about sport and I get on with them, you know, which is, it's a strange experience, but you have to get on and try it for yourself. For anyone listening, make sure you get on and try it out.
Well, we'll link all of the information in our show notes after the episode. So, tell me this, going from obviously your background as a professional athlete into now building a technology business, what has surprised you the most, or maybe what's been the biggest challenge as you have built and scaled this platform?
The biggest challenge, getting other people to believe.
Okay, tell me more.
Trying to see my vision and like knocking on the door and says, I'm telling you, voice, podcasting, social audio, it's going to happen. I'm talking about this since 2014. And, you know, the old school one reply we got from a person we were talking to potential investment was, video killed the radio star. And the lack of beliefs. It's all about video. Why would people care about voice? Why would they care about? I said, yes, it's about video now. You need to think about what's next, what's coming. And, you know, it's not the people who come last to the gold rush who make the money. It's the people who are there first. And ultimately the people who provide the tools and the shovels. We're doing both with Limor. So that was one thing that was quite difficult with it. And as well, it depends on the market you're in. Like back to the sport thing as well, like a coach can make or break you depending on his belief in you. It's the same with investors and the market. Like Europe, Ireland, UK is very risk adverse to products like Limor, as opposed to where you guys are. And the reason why you're the leading country in the world is you're risk takers, you're big thinkers and seeing, right, not today, what's next, what's coming, you know? And there's a great phrase I learned recently, but our investors on this side of the pond like to wait at the finish line and pick the winner, where you guys will bet on the people at the beginning of the race. And it's that philosophy is difficult to work with here. But we are proven, because we're still here, everything we said is going to happen has happened. The product we have now is an incredible product. People are starting to wake up and believe. And I said, well, you don't believe me, look at the stats.
Yeah.
Look at the market. Numbers don't lie. And like, okay, fair point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I wonder if the last couple of years with something like Clubhouse or, you know, Spotify buying Locker Room, I don't know if you tried that platform, or even Twitter with what they're doing with Twitter Spaces. I wonder if that foray into social audio by these larger giants have made your job convincing people easier because now, look, there's these proof points in the market, or has it made it harder because now there are these big billion-dollar, you know, conglomerates that are basically fishing in the same pond as you with, you know, a much larger fishing rod, so to speak. So how has that been for you, and what are your thoughts on some of these platforms?
It's a bit of both. I'm look at the positive side of it, but I'm a realist too, and how other people think. It's definitely a proof of concept. Legitimizes what I'm doing and what I've been talking about for the last 6-7 years, whatever it is at this stage, and gives confidence to those people, and they see the opportunity. And even with that, so yes, you've Clubhouse, you know, worth $4 billion. It was worth $1 billion in less than a year. They were valued at 100 million when they had 1,500 people on the platform. We've over 100,000 on the platform. So when you're doing product comparisons, people are like, holy shit. So you guys are, wow, that's amazing. And then there's the other side of it as well. As you said, there's like, oh, well, Clubhouse are doing it and Twitter are doing it and Spotify are doing it. I said, yes, they're doing what people are only trying to understand what social audio is, but they're doing live audio. It's very specific. The other platforms like Twitter, it's an add-on to a different type of platform as well. They're trying to, with Twitter, people go to Twitter because they like how Twitter works. It's text, it's short, it's lack of thinking, it's instant, where voice is a different medium. And you're trying to get people who play NFL to play basketball all of a sudden. That takes time, and it's not an easy thing to do. I think they're doing it. I really like the Spaces side of it. But again, it's kind of this thing about, there's no point in doing it because Facebook are there, or it's kind of like, right, okay, why would you do any type of business? You look at all the payment platforms, for example, like Revolut's or PayPal, and there's a new one coming up and becoming $1 billion every week or every month. Why did they bother to do it if there was PayPal already, or if there was traditional banking already? There's opportunity everywhere. And in podcasts and voice in particular, there's only 2.5 million podcasts globally. There's 1 billion profiles on Instagram. So you're in a market that people are saying, podcast is oversaturated. And I said, no, it's not. It hasn't even got started. So we're first doing the way we do it. We have 7 years experience and knowledge in the space, more experience than most people in the space when it comes to social audio.
Yeah.
And that's blowing smoke up my own arse at the moment, but it's facts. And the team we have around me as well, going back to the sports thing, I have an incredible team, business. I need to give a big shout out to Graham Began as well, as the chairman of the Limor board, but his business experience is incredible. His expertise is a KPMG trained accountant, but his expertise is risk. So he sits on boards of $1 billion businesses to assess their risk. And he looked at Limor and assessed the risk and potential and the market opportunity. He's like, holy shit, there's something here.
Yeah,
I want to get involved. And so I've been learning from him. There's been loads of people along the way. Of course, you know, people right at the beginning, you know, there's like John Keane as well is involved there. at my early kind of support, people didn't really understand it, but they believed in me and my belief in it, and they're still here and help us get it to this stage. And there's loads. Like, we've got some amazing investors and shareholders, but it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's an important lesson, I think, that I want to highlight from what you said there, which is, when entrepreneurs are looking at competitive markets, it's actually really important to pick a niche. And I know that niche or niche, like it gets a bad rap sometimes because people think, oh, you can't build a big enough business. Slack very famously had a land and expand model, right? Start somewhere, own it, own as much of it as you can, and then look around you and say, where is the opportunity? But at least you've got a core business that is serving a use case. And when you look at this sort of broad landscape, look, I'm a believer with you. We started this podcast 2 years ago. 2 years ago, people were saying, really, do we need another, podcast talking to athletes? It's like, well, yeah, but we're different. Our backgrounds are different. The stories that we're getting are different. And ultimately, not every podcast has to be Joe Rogan. Not every piece of audio content has to reach 100 million people. For us, thousands of people, but if it's the right thousands of people, if it's the right business people, if it's the right, athletes, then we're making a difference in somebody's life. And so I think it's really about the mismatch of expectations versus, execution. And I think for you guys realizing, hey, we're not, competing with live audio. It's a whole new thing. It's asynchronous conversation. It's, to me, at least from what you're describing, it's very much like a Reddit thread. But instead of being text, it's audio, and we're building off of each other. And maybe it's a longer conversation that requires some commenting, or maybe it's short snippets where somebody asks a question and I get to chime in with my response, and you get to chime in from there. And so, defining as an entrepreneur what it is that you are doing and how it's different, how you stand apart from the competition, is a really important part of your success in convincing people that you're here to stay, that you're here to do something different.
Yeah, big time. And the thing about it is, we are so invested in voice and podcasting and social audio. We know all about it. But go to the layman in the street and say, what do you think of Clubhouse? Or what do you think of Twitter Spaces? Or what do you think of Spotify Green Room? And they go, what the hell are you talking about? I've never heard of it. So this shows how early it is in the opportunity, again, in the space. And he said, like, you don't need to have 1 billion people on the platform, or on the platform, to be a success. You can have 1 million people on the platform and 3% are subscribers, and it could be a unicorn, and this is the other side of it as well. It's like, you get shut down, or people try to shut you down and say, if you're not a Facebook or if you're not an Instagram, there's no point.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous, but that's the mentality of a lot of people.
Well, those people are not the ones actually building, right? I think there's a great sort of phrase that says it's very easy to heckle from the cheap seats. It's a lot harder to step into the arena. And you quite literally in your career have stepped into the arena, and now you're stepping into the arena as an entrepreneur. So you've continued that streak. So Shane, where we love to close with our guests, and where I'd love to close with you, what is one piece of advice, whether it's about business or really anything, that you would love to give your younger self if you could today?
Oh, this is a difficult question. Piece of advice. I think this is kind of like, would you do anything different? Is it?
Sure. Yeah. But I guess it's a little bit less than would you do everything different, but a little bit more, knowing what you know now. Is there something you wish you knew sooner?
A great phrase, I think it was it Ronald Reagan? Believe but verify. Trust but verify is a big one. Because trusting people is so important. Because you don't build relationships until you have trust in there. But unfortunately, we live in a world where not everyone has good intentions. And that's business as well as sport and all that. Especially as an entrepreneur, you have people who sell you the sun, moon, and the stars. But when it comes to it, their intentions are not good. So it's be trusting, give people opportunity, but start to recognize the red flags sooner. I've learned over the time but that only comes with experience. So I don't know how you can give it to your younger self. But believe but verify, trust but verify.
I love that, Shane. That is good advice for us to carry forward with us, and I agree with you. Only doing it after a couple of years, only after being burned, maybe do you realize not to touch the hot stove. So I appreciate the honesty there. Shane Monahan, I'm so glad that you joined us to share more about your app Limor today. Thank you so much for joining me on The Game Plan.
No, it was brilliant. Really enjoyed it.